My first book is City of God. It's an ethnography of what I call and what I've developed as Christian citizenship in post-war Guatemala. The book at its most basic is about participation. It's about the question of how an individual generates a sense of belonging, a sense of membership, a sense of responsibility for the nation, as well as a means to participate in the formation of their nation. City of God is principally about how Pentecostalism, particularly Neo-Pentecostalism, impacts the creation and formation of citizenship in post-war Guatemala. How does Christianity provide a means by which individuals, an increasing number of individuals, understand themselves as belonging to the nation, as responsible to the nation, as having the means to act on behalf of that nation? There's a lot of sense right now that new forms of Christianity, that's Pentecostalism, charismatic Christianity, Neo-Pentecostalism, is a depoliticizing Christianity. It makes people concerned about themselves instead of the nation. I found that the opposite was true. In Guatemala, Neo-Pentecostal Christianity provided not just a language, but a series of practices and performances that allowed individuals to perform as citizens of their nation. And so 60% of Guatemala, and I would suggest in other places where there's an entanglement between democratization and Neo-Pentecostalism, enact their citizenship through things like prayer, fasts, examinations of conscience. They buy into the nation, they perform and practice their membership in the nation through prayers on behalf of, for example, post-war violence, by fasting for the kind of candidate that they want to have elected into office. Guatemalans tend to speak in tongues or participate in this exorcisms and examinations of conscience instead of voting. Guatemala has one of the lowest voter turnouts in all of Latin America. The kind of participation that we see, the active participation that we see, comes through, not in spite of, their Christianity, which isn't necessarily the depolitization of citizenship or the repolitization of citizenship, such that, and I found this over and over again over my 2 years in Guatemala, that Christian citizens oftentimes take to the soul instead of the streets, that their kind of participation makes them turn inwards to examine themselves, to reform themselves for their nation, that the soul becomes a site of reformation, moral reformation for the nation, as opposed to the electorate or a particular candidate or renewing the tax system. No, there is a loud dimension to this Pentecostalism that we see in Ghana and Mozambique, in Guatemala, and in other parts of Latin America, Africa, South Asia. There is this loud dimension to it, a singing and praise. So the fieldwork that I completed was in a so-called megachurch. And this megachurch has strong connections in the United States, in Korea, in Western Europe, and throughout Latin America. It itself, although the main megachurch is based in Guatemala City, it has satellite churches throughout the Guatemalan highlands as well as throughout the United States. Much of my fieldwork took place in the south side of Chicago, where Guatemalan migrants participated as Christian citizens in a new nation in the U.S. and cultivated their own sense of belonging by way of this Pentecostalism. There are louder moments of expression, the singing and praise in these collective megachurches, these loud songs and spiritual revivals, absolutely. The focus of Christian citizenship, I found, takes place in quieter moments. What other scholars might understand as a kind of asceticism, a monkish kind of behavior, that certainly every Sunday it is a raucous celebration of faith, though the rest of the week is involved in this very quiet, prayerful effort to reform the nation. The sense that one's individual moral character is intimately tied to the future of the nation, such that if one sins, one is contributing to the larger sin of the nation. And how can Guatemala reform, if not by way of each individual person? Pentecostalism has this powerful or vivid sense that it's not that we are the revolution, the collective revolution, but that I am the revolution. That each individual person constitutes a distinct revolution that needs to be completed by way of things that I've mentioned: fast, prayer, examinations of conscience. So the louder moments absolutely constitute what I think is the most visible public figure of Pentecostalism, or public image of Pentecostalism. But the quieter moments are some of the most powerful in terms of the formation of what it means to belong to a nation. The question remains, and this is a question that in many ways my book ends on, that City of God recognizes the ambivalence about, whether that kind of participation is the most effective participation, is the kind of participation that we should be excited about. Is this the direction in which Guatemala should be moving, if 60% of Guatemala is charismatic or Pentecostal Christian, if they cultivate their citizenship by way of praying, fasting, examining their conscience, instead of voting, paying their taxes, or taking to the streets in form of petitions or protests, is that a vision of a social movement that strikes the core of democracy? Is that the goal of democratization, just to have individuals participate as citizens? Or is the quality and character of that participation need to continue to be open for debate? And so in many ways, that's what City of God raises. The question about participation, the quality and character of that participation, and the promise and lingering ambivalence of citizenship.